Welcome to ExpressBook Insights. The book we go through together today is How to Control Your Anxiety Before It Controls You. Anxiety is a very common psychological state among people nowadays. Many attribute the cause of anxiety to external factors such as high work pressure, poor living environments, difficulties in children's education, poor interpersonal relationships, and so on. However, the author Albert Ellis tells us that anxiety is actually self-created, and we have the ability to control it. Albert Ellis is recognized as the second most influential applied psychologist after Carl Rogers, and before Freud. He is the founder of Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy and the precursor of cognitive behavioral therapy. Our EBT therapy contends that what causes emotional distress in people is not the specific events themselves, but the attitudes, perspectives, and evaluations, the cognitive aspects of these events. Therefore, to change emotions, such as relieving anxiety, it is more important to change the way we view and evaluate events rather than changing external conditions. Compared to the then mainstream psychoanalytic school, Ellis's Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy was seen as a more active treatment method, as psychoanalysis overly emphasized the impact of early life and family of origin on a person's development. Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy does not dwell on the past, and instead puts the power to change in the hands of individuals. In other words, if we are willing to actively change our cognition, we can free ourselves from negative emotions such as anxiety, depression, and anger. Since the 1980s, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy has been highly esteemed and remains one of the most commonly used therapeutic methods by psychotherapists today. Ellis himself successfully cured his social anxiety and speech anxiety using this method, and his methods and experiences are included in the book How to Control Anxiety Before It Controls You. Next, I will mainly explain how to control anxiety from three aspects: how anxiety is generated, how to use Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy to control anxiety, and I will introduce some practical methods to control anxiety. These methods can be used alone or in conjunction with Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. First, let's look at how anxiety is generated. In Ellis's view, anxiety is mainly triggered by three factors: biological, environmental, and ourselves. First are the biological factors. We naturally have many desires, such as the desire to be well-fed, sleep well, be loved, feel secure, etc. When these desires are unmet, we feel anxious. Next are environmental factors. The people and things around us affect the fulfillment of our desires. If they help us fulfill our desires, we feel happy. If they hinder us, we feel anxious. The last factor is ourselves, specifically our cognition, which includes our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. How we view what happens and how we feel about these events significantly impact whether we become anxious. Ellis believes that the most important of these factors is ourselves, because even with identical biological and environmental factors, everyone feels differently. Like the half-full glass of water, one person may feel anxious thinking, only half a glass left, while another is happy thinking there's still half a glass. Therefore, Ellis says anxiety is self-created. Additionally, there is a difference between healthy and unhealthy anxiety. Healthy anxiety keeps us appropriately alert and serves a protective function. Unhealthy anxiety, on the other hand, can paralyze us emotionally and, in severe cases, destroy a person. Take job hunting. For example, healthy anxiety drives us to study hard, get into a good university, or learn more professional skills. Unhealthy anxiety, however, leaves us in a constant state of worry and fear, unable to eat or sleep, constantly asking, what if I can't find a job? This makes even normal life difficult, let alone studying and improving skills. So, how do we determine whether our anxiety is healthy or unhealthy? Ellis proposed three criteria. First, whether the anxiety is detached from reality. Second, whether it exaggerates or overgeneralizes. And third, whether it is overly dogmatic, seeing things in black and white. First, is the anxiety disconnected from reality? For example, if someone constantly worries about elevator malfunctions and always takes the stairs regardless of the floor, but the elevator is actually in good condition and has never malfunctioned, this anxiety is disconnected from reality and is excessive and unhealthy. Second, does the anxiety exaggerate or generalize? For instance, if a boy is rejected by a girl and then believes he will never find a girl who likes him and is doomed to be alone, this anxiety tends to exaggerate reality. Third, is the anxiety overly dogmatic or black and white? If someone, just because they didn't receive praise from their boss, believes that the entire company is dissatisfied and hostile towards them, this is an example of overly absolute, black and white thinking leading to unhealthy anxiety. How can we control unhealthy anxiety? Since anxiety mainly stems from our cognition, Ellis believes that by adjusting and controlling our cognitive approach to things, we can control anxiety. This is the core idea of Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. Next, let's discuss the second question: how to control anxiety through Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. The core theory of Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy is the ABCD theory. In this theory, A represents the specific event that occurs B represents the beliefs or notions we hold about the event, and C represents the emotional and behavioral consequences following the event. D stands for disruptions to challenge irrational beliefs, and E represents the effective new beliefs formed after the disruptions. Let's first discuss the first three letters, namely the event A, the belief B, and the emotion consequence C. Generally, we believe that our emotions depend on the event A. For example, if I get promoted today, I will be very happy. If I quarrel with a friend, I will be unhappy. But Ellis believes this logic is problematic because it overlooks an important variable: be our beliefs and notions about the event. He gives an example faced with a job interview failure. Some people might feel sad because they think failing the interview means they are worthless and will never find a better job. Others might feel happy because they didn't like the job in the first place, or they think they can learn valuable lessons from the failure and do better next time. Some might feel disappointed but not overly dejected because they tell themselves that, although they like the job, there might be others more suitable than them, and they can try other opportunities. Others might feel indifferent because their satisfaction with the job was only 50%. So it's okay if they don't get it. So we see that in this example. The event is the same for everyone failing the job interview, but different emotions C are produced. Some are sad, some are happy, and others are indifferent. This is because of different beliefs and notions about failing the job interview. Therefore, Ellis believes that to control anxiety, it's most important to avoid forming negative, irrational beliefs. In the job interview example we just discussed, I will never find a good job again if I fail this interview is an irrational belief that can cause anxiety. Irrational beliefs that cause anxiety often have one thing in common: they usually contain the word must. This must belief could be about ourselves, like I must successfully complete every important task, I must be liked by everyone, or I must always be excellent. It could also be about others, like everyone must do things my way, or others must help me when I need it. The must belief could also be about the objective world and environment, such as the work environment must be as I envisioned: high-paying, low stress, and close to home, or the weather must change according to my needs. We know that the objective world is not black and white, it has a large gray area. If we hold on to beliefs like it must be this way, or it has to be that way, we are likely to feel anxious. So what should we do if we have formed irrational beliefs? This leads us to the next letter, D, disputation of beliefs. The disruption has both sides within ourselves. It's a self-disruption. Ellis proposes 3 methods of self-disruption. I'll use the irrational belief the person I love must love me back as an example to introduce these 3 methods of disruption. The first method is called reality or empirical disruption. The main reason why irrational beliefs are unfounded is that they lack objective reality. You can ask yourself, why must the person I love me back? Is there any evidence to prove they must do so? Do they have any reason to be obliged to love me? Through reality or empirical disruption, you will realize that everyone has the freedom to choose whether to love you or not. The second method is logical disruption. Many irrational beliefs are illogical. When using logical disruption, you can pose questions to yourself such as, just because I love someone deeply, does it logically mean they must love me back? Is there a necessary connection between my hope for their love and their obligation to love me? The answer is usually no. The third method is practical and pragmatic disruption. This approach involves asking yourself questions from the perspective of consequences, like, what would happen if I insist that the person I love must love me back? What consequences will it bring me? The result is often realizing that not being loved back can make you feel terrible, leading you to anxiety. When you disruption this way, you realize that such irrational beliefs draw you into anxiety. Therefore, you proactively adjust, replacing irrational beliefs with rational beliefs and reasonable expectations. These are the 3 methods to disruption with irrational beliefs. The disruption leads us to form effective new beliefs, which is the last letter E we will discuss. For instance, with the irrational belief the person I love must love me back. Through disruption, we can develop an effective new belief: I can freely choose whom I love, and the other person also has the freedom to decide whether to love me. With that, I have finished introducing Ellis's Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. Let's briefly review this process. An event A leads us to form a belief B, which in turn creates an emotion or outcome C if this belief is irrational. We disruption it with D and eventually form a rational belief E. Now we move on to the third part, specific methods to control anxiety. These methods can help solidify the rational beliefs we've just established and further control anxiety. In the book How to Control Your Anxiety Before It Controls You, Ellis introduces 21 methods to control anxiety. I will explain the 6 most practical and easiest to implement. Positive imagery. The method involves visualizing the specific thing that causes you anxiety, while also imagining handling it well. For example, Ellis had a visitor who had suffered from public speaking anxiety since the age of 13 and was still afraid of speaking in public at the age of 30. However, he had to face this issue as he was promoted and needed to arrange work for team members and explain new operational procedures. Through therapy, the visitor realized his irrational belief was, "I am familiar with these procedures and got promoted for it. So I must explain them clearly to the audience and convince them. If I don't, I'm not fit for my job and my colleagues will surely laugh at me." By disrupting this irrational belief, the visitor developed a new rational belief. Even if I don't speak well, it doesn't mean I'm incompetent, just not good at public speaking. He then used positive imagery to consolidate this conclusion, imagining himself communicating with the audience without feeling nervous and responding to questions confidently. This visualization process helped him see that he could control the content of his speech and interact comfortably with the audience. He still worried about speaking, but not excessively. After continuous practice and challenging his irrational beliefs, he successfully completed his first presentation and even started looking forward to speaking later on. 2. Cost-benefit analysis. This method essentially involves mentally calculating the pros and cons of confronting something anxiety-inducing versus avoiding it, then making a choice internally to face anxiety with a more positive attitude. In life, we encounter various difficulties. We can choose to circumvent them, which might temporarily spare us from difficulty but could still lead to trouble. Alternatively, we can choose to confront these difficulties, which might be uncomfortable at first, but often brings significant benefits upon trying a few times. For instance, some people are terrified of flying and would take trains regardless of the distance because of the irrational belief that flying is dangerous and something terrible will happen if they fly. If they use the reality and empirical disruption method we discussed earlier, they would challenge the irrational belief that flying will inevitably lead to disaster. They would likely reach a more positive and factual belief flying is safe in 99.9% of cases. Although accidents happen, the probability is extremely low. Through cost-benefit analysis, they would realize that avoiding the extremely low probability of danger in flying causes significant inconvenience in their lives, which is actually not worth it. Writing down the results of this analysis and reminding themselves daily, they would persuade themselves internally to try flying. After enduring discomfort the first few times, they would find that flying makes life much more convenient, thus overcoming their fear of flying. 3. Relaxation and distraction techniques. Ellis particularly recommended yoga and meditation. Often, anxiety stems from our excessive focus and worry about something, since our brain cannot focus on two things simultaneously. Yoga and meditation can pull us out of anxiety and momentarily immerse us in a relatively calm world, thus achieving the goal of controlling anxiety. In addition to yoga and meditation, Ellis also introduced the famous Relaxation Therapy by Herbert Benson. Benson was one of the earliest researchers to study biofeedback, meditation, and relaxation techniques. Let's briefly explain how to perform relaxation therapy first. Choose a word, like peace, the number 1, or some meaningful phrase. Then find a comfortable position to sit, close your eyes, relax your muscles, and breathe slowly and naturally as you exhale. Keep repeating your chosen word or phrase. Focus your attention entirely on your breathing, relaxation, and the words or phrases that bring you peace. If anxious thoughts invade your mind at this time, maintain a relaxed and passive attitude. Try this for 10 to 20 minutes, 1 to 2 times a day, which can be very effective in relieving anxiety. 4. Unconditional self-acceptance. Often, our anxiety comes from conditional self-acceptance. For example, if I successfully complete a task at work, then I am good. Or if others praise me, then I am good. However, once these conditions are lost, like no one praises us or we even get questioned by others, we become dissatisfied with ourselves and anxious. A crucial method in rational emotive behavior therapy to control anxiety is unconditional self-acceptance. Unlike conditional self-acceptance, unconditional self-acceptance means holding the standards of evaluation in our own hands, rather than letting others evaluate us. First, we can set some life goals and purposes for ourselves. Like, I want to be an honest person. After setting these goals, we naturally evaluate our thoughts, feelings, and actions. When our behavior aligns with these goals, it is good. When it does not, it is bad. By setting life goals, we can establish a relatively stable self-concept, rather than being good or bad based on others' opinions. Some might ask, what if my behavior does not align with my goals? Won't I blame myself and give myself a bad evaluation, thus failing to achieve self-acceptance? Here, Ellis reminds us that when using unconditional self-acceptance, we should avoid making general judgments about ourselves. For instance, if my behavior aligns with my goal, then I am a person who has done a good thing, rather than simply evaluating oneself as I am a good person. Similarly, if my behavior does not align with my goal, then I am a person who has done a bad thing. But it does not mean I am a bad person. The essence of self-acceptance is accepting all aspects of oneself. We have good qualities and bad qualities. Times when we are smart and times when we are not. Recognizing this, we won't easily negate ourselves entirely, just because we did something bad. 5. Exposure therapy. Simply put, exposure therapy means the more anxious you are about something, the more you should do it. Sometimes our anxiety about certain things isn't because they are inherently difficult or terrifying, but because we are unfamiliar with them. Exposure therapy involves continually approaching the things that cause you anxiety to develop a sense of familiarity, thus controlling anxiety. Ellis, who had severe public speaking and social anxiety in his early years, overcame his anxiety with the help of exposure therapy. Afraid of public speaking? Force yourself to speak more. At 19, Ellis decided to overcome his public speaking anxiety by joining and later leading a political organization. As a leader, he inevitably had to speak frequently. Initially, he refused, but then he forced himself to speak, regardless of how uncomfortable it was. Over time, he found himself becoming more composed during speeches. He no longer got nervous or sweaty but focused on his content. He realized he had no issues with public speaking. It was the anxiety that held him back. For his social anxiety, Ellis adopted a similar approach. Afraid of socializing? Take every opportunity to chat with different people. Ellis set a rule for himself. If he saw a woman sitting on a park bench, he would immediately sit on the bench next to her and start a conversation. Over 8 months, he approached around 130 women. 30 walked away, but over 100 stayed and talked with him. This method helped Ellis overcome his social anxiety. 6. Shame attacking exercises. Ellis found that a part of our anxiety actually stems from our sense of shame, and this shame-induced anxiety can last a long time. For instance, we might still remember embarrassing ourselves in public years ago, or hurting a good friend. We feel ashamed and think of ourselves as bad people, leading to prolonged anxiety. For anxiety caused by shame, Ellis's solution is to do things that make you feel ashamed until the shame disappears. This is similar in logic to exposure therapy, which emphasizes doing more of what you fear. Shame attacking exercises emphasize doing things that make you feel ashamed until you no longer feel that way. What kind of activities should you choose for these exercises? A key criterion is that although they may make you feel ashamed, they should not harm others. For example, if you're tone deaf, you could sing a song loudly in a public square, or go to a barber shop to buy fruit. Seemingly nonsensical activities, but Ellis believed that we need to do such strange things to practice accepting the unusual glances from others. Shame-attacking exercises may sound difficult or even bizarre, but they often bring unexpected results when actually performed. First, you'll find that doing the activity is never as scary as you imagine, because when you focus on doing it, your attention is all on the task itself, and you won't overthink your shame. Second, you'll realize that no one really notices you're doing a shame-attacking exercise, meaning you're not as important as you thought. This realization will help you understand that the things you previously felt insurmountable due to shame might not be so serious after all. Third, for people who are easily ashamed, this exercise will help them face embarrassing and shameful situations more easily in the future. That's all for the 6 methods to control anxiety I've introduced. They are positive imagination. Control anxiety by imagining the anxious situation and also imagining handling it well. Cost-benefit analysis. Calculate the gains and losses between facing anxiety and temporary avoidance, and make a choice internally with a more positive mindset. Relaxation and distraction. Use yoga, meditation, and Herbert Benson's relaxation therapy to alleviate anxiety. Unconditional self-acceptance. Set life goals and principles for oneself. Gaining control over self-perception to control anxiety. Exposure therapy. Continuously attempt the things that make you anxious to develop familiarity and ultimately control anxiety. Shame-attacking exercises. Do things that make you feel ashamed until those feelings disappear, thereby eliminating shame-induced anxiety. In the book, Ellis first proposes that anxiety is self-generated, and not all anxieties need to be controlled. We only need to manage those that are unhealthy. Next, we discussed how to use Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy to control anxiety. Its main method involves identifying irrational beliefs that cause anxiety, debating these beliefs, and then forming a new, rational belief. Finally, I introduced 6 specific methods for controlling anxiety. These methods help establish rational cognition and ultimately achieve the goal of controlling anxiety. In conclusion, how to control anxiety before it controls you is much more than a self-help book. It's a guide to transforming your relationship with anxiety. Ellis's techniques, backed by years of research and practice. empower readers to take control of their mental well-being. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by anxiety, or just want to understand it better, this book is an invaluable resource. It's a reminder that while we may not control everything in our lives, we can control our responses to them. Thank you for joining us on ExpressBook Insights. If you found this summary helpful, please like, share, and subscribe for more insightful book summaries. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this book, or any other recommendations you have. So please leave a comment below. See you in the next video.